Okay, so let's start. Uh, First of all, thank you all for joining us for the session. Also, for those who just joined us, this is Divya Garg, and I'll be moderating today's session. So, moving ahead, welcome everyone to Managing Product Development Chaos Like a Boss by Aditya. And it'll be, I'm super excited to be a part of this session, and let's see how it goes. Going ahead, let me just brief you about what's really the Undistancing Project. So, Undistancing Project is a forum of professionals around the world who come together to share their experiences uh, throughout their lives. And we launched ourselves in June, and we've been fortunate enough to have a family from 50 plus countries. Going ahead, it'll be great. We're expanding our organizing team, so it'll be great if you all could join our team. So I'll just take a moment for you to scan the code if you're interested to join our organizing team. Um, Moving on, here are some housekeeping rules that we have. So first is that today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with you in the post-session email. Also, please make sure your microphone is always on mute so that there is no extra noise in the session. Also, during the Q&A session, I'll be unmuting you whenever it is required. Also, if you have any questions at any point of the session, you just need to put it in the chat, and Aditya will be taking it over whenever there would be an appropriate time. Also, we would like to take a moment to thank all the donors. These are certain initiatives that we support, and of course, it's about creating a small difference. So yes, of course, we thank all the donors who have donated for this session. Again, please follow us on these different channels so as to be connected and also to stay updated for any future sessions. I'll just pause for a moment for you to scan and be a part of it before we move on with the session. Fair enough. So now I would introduce you all to Aditya. He is he's the Vice President of Product Management in Koinworks, which is based in Jakarta, Indonesia. And hi Aditya, can you? I'll stop sharing my screen. Would you
Sure.
introduce yourself briefly?
Yeah. So hi guys. This is Aditya this side. I currently lead the product team at Koinworks. To give you a quick introduction, Koinworks is a fintech super app based out of Jakarta. So we do everything from investment products to loan products. Typically, let's say mutual funds, gold investments, or typically robo advisory based peer-to-peer lending product. That's how we started. And now we are into loan products as well. So the complete ecosystem of managing the money for people in Indonesia. That would be the primary goal here. Should I share my
Thank you
screen
so
now?
much. Yeah, Aditya. Let's probably move on with the session.
Okay. So first up, thanks for all the people who are here. I think when I was making this and the TUP team had reached out for a topic, right? The one thing which was always in my mind was whenever you talk about prioritization or estimation, it's chaos is the always first word which comes to my mind. And I've always defined product management as nothing but organized chaos. So, I mean, that's what we are all trying to do here, right? So this would be I mean, I've scheduled the talk into two parts. One is the estimation, and then probably we'll take a brief pause, address the questions if any, and then deep dive into the prioritization. So going to discuss three frameworks for effort estimation, which might help you, and five frameworks in the prioritization, which you can implement. So quick introductions, yeah. So Yep. Okay, that's not how I looked during the COVID time, but yeah. I started my career in Deloitte. That was risk consulting. So I think my the liking to solve problems across BFSI industry, pharma, manufacturing, or fintech started that time, and did that good couple of years, and then I went on to start up my own startup. Uh, um, raised funds, crash landed. Then I was like, okay, there are tons of learnings. Then the second one came in as part of the founding team there. This was more. This is on-demand beauty services for women at home. So, bunch of engineers trying to solve problems for women, and into the beauty space. High margin industry. A typical B2C product industry. Learned a lot of key metrics or the system or the app infrastructure from there. That was my journey. Then I moved on to Zoomcar. This was probably my second job. Actually, it becomes quite difficult after founding something to get back to, doing your own job. So that was a curve which I had at Zoomcar initially, and ended up building a peer-to-peer subscription platform, one of its kind in the country there. Again, massive learnings. The last part of the year certainly spent in the fintech angle of it, and that's what brought me to Koinworks here at Jakarta. So this has been my journey so far in the product journey. Self-taught, self-learned, and yeah, I have met a bunch of amazing engineers on the way who have made learning so much fun. So about attendees, so when Divya had sent me the data today, what I figured was, okay, it's good to also understand who am I talking to. So I think what I saw out of the data was bunch of the people, freshers, 0 to 2 years work experience, from there to 5 to 10 years experience. So I guess going to meet a diverse set of people today. So eager to understand and go through the questions. I have tried to keep my content aligned to this, so that while few are very basic primers, we might deep dive as we wish. These are typically the people, and the professions they come from. Some are titles, some are fields. So I understand that, bulk of the people are into product management and software developer, and good to see the data guys being there. But a good diverse audience. So happy to take this ahead. The next would be, so let's just jump right into effort estimation. I hope you guys can see my pointer. Journey to effective, right? So I have always, so in my previous companies, right, there have been situations where I've learned from the engineers, have, Googled stuff, met people, product leaders, try to understand, okay. So I've come to an understanding that there is no perfect way to do effort estimation or prioritization either. But the right way to look at this is you having a very good understanding of the kind of organization you work at, the kind of people you work with. That particularly should define the kind of model you choose. There's no one fit all kind of a situation here. I think what is really good at Facebook might not be really good at your startup, right? So I think through my startup journey, I have, the talk would be very much aligned to the startup journey. So Daniel Kahneman is one of my favorite authors. Interestingly, he's a psychologist actually, but he won a Nobel Prize for economics. So he has mastered irrationality in human behavior. That's what I love him for. You guys would have seen this book on majority of the bookshelves. If you have not read, this should be the first book you guys should start reading. You'll save a lot of your time by reading the right thing first. This is a second book. He had written this before. Not many people are aware of this. This is Heuristics and Biases. We all talk about biases in our product management or everywhere, right? But I guess heuristics is nothing but, if I put it easily, these are mental hacks. These are mental hacks to do something very quickly and to help you achieve that, right? So this would be probably a secondary read for you. You can always go thinking fast and slow as your primary read and then go forward. So he is a true inspiration for me until recent times, when I'm like, okay, what am I doing something wrong and how I can improve myself and what we do. These are the books which have guided me. So there are two types of biases we are going to talk about today, which leads up to something called as the planning fallacy. So the primary is the optimism bias. So let's say I've done something before myself, then I always end up uh, underestimating it. I'm like, okay, I can do this very quickly. Like I've done it before. And go back to your college times. If there was a particular code you have written, particular assignment you have done, particular exam you have given or cracked, you're like, okay, I know this content. I can just do it quickly and I'll be able to do it very quickly, right? So that is the optimism bias. It's the flaw in the forecasting based upon the best case scenarios which you have gone through yourself. Okay. The second one is the external view for the same task. So optimism bias. So let's say there is a task A. Optimism bias is what you would have towards the task A, and the pessimistic bias is what your engineers would have towards the said task A. So they would always end up or tend to overestimate a task, right? Because of the lack of visibility, awareness, or the buffer they kind of keep into that. So whenever the optimism bias and what do you say? Whenever the optimism bias and the pessimistic bias come together, that's when the issue actually happens, and that is what we call as a planning fallacy. And majority of the people tend to fail in that. So just to summarize, the planning fallacy is a phenomenon, I mean, which is a combination of optimism bias and pessimistic bias. With like all biases, you have no control about, the optimism bias tends to happen without your own knowledge. And this is applicable to probably everything, whatever you do in your daily life, not just product management. Whether it's just like booking a ticket or you knowing yourself as to, are you a person who do something at the last moment versus somebody who is much planned before? You can start working on these biases. That's why I guess Daniel Kahneman is always considered as, he won a Nobel Prize for economics finally. Example is very simply, two dogs, two friends. One guy says, okay, let's go to the mud later. And the other guy is, let me finish my bone. And turns out this guy says, last time you took 2 days. This is the external force who is saying that, the data said 2 days, but he's very optimistic because he feels he has learned something from his previous exercise, and this being a different bone or size, he will be able to achieve it. But it's not only sunset, but at night still you just have the other dog shouting for Henry, right? So what is the summary? So summaries is humans are not good at doing estimations. It's okay. It's perfectly fine. We all need to accept it. Every single kind, all the different kind of humans, we all are not perfect at doing estimations. We can go wrong at two places. Either we are very underconfident, which is the pessimistic bias, which leads to overestimation, or we are very overconfident, which is the optimistic bias, which leads to underestimation. Now, the person who as giving the requirement, usually the product manager tends to be overconfident because also the kind of association he is in constantly, right? Bulk of the time, product managers talk to everyone, but bulk of the time they end up talking to business, data, marketing, and there the mantra is only go to market fast, right? The GTM has to be fast. But when you look at the engineering side, there is tech debt, there is structure, there is architecture, there is how you want to do a particular thing. And that's when the planning fallacy is usually resulting into the delays in the product development or release cycle. To some extent, if this estimation is done really bad, you might start seeing a lot of resistance internal to your organization, whether it's finance, marketing, a lot of people who end up, they get jaded, right? Because every single time you tell them that we'll get this out in 2 weeks and it takes like 3 to 4 weeks, because trust is a commodity, right? You need to spend it well. So when you estimate something properly and you commit something properly, you never are in a worry as to, okay, your commitment to delivery ratio is always in check. And usually the effort estimation from an agile point of view, the conversation always starts with, how much will it cost in terms of resources, time, my go-to-market cost. But usually, if the planning is not done properly, it leads up to how long will it take me to deliver something, and people start assuming that, and then they come to you, which is quite demotivating sometimes. So this is these two biases and the planning fallacies what I wanted to set as a foundation for our when we jump into the concepts of effort estimation. This is a very simple iron triangle. The iron triangle has 4 constraints. It's a classic agile estimation concept, which we all should be aware of. The reason it's called as iron triangle is because it's a stiff iron triangle which cannot be flexible. I mean, it's not flexible in nature. You cannot increase anything. All the components have to occupy the same space. So let's just say that I'm supposed to build a mobile application, and I started with scope A with a perfect quality, schedule, and cost in mind. Now, in this example, if you see, cost is measurable. You can always have the amount of hours you spent as a product manager in crafting something and the engineers in building that. And schedule is also measurable because now I can calculate the cost into hours and say that, okay, by this time I want to release something. Now, what gets very difficult to measure is the quality. Now, I'm not talking about the quality assurance technique or the API or the product QA here. All I'm talking about, how will you measure the quality of a product by looking at it? It's code quality, right? Different people have different ways of coding it. Standards are different. It might be low code, quick. That depends totally upon the engineer. But in life, you always play the cards you're dealt with. So let's say you have 10 engineers in your team. They're the best people you have. You always love them, right? Now, if I increase the scope from my earlier scope A, and I have to still maintain the same schedule and cost, that means I have to either compromise on my quality or my engineers have to stretch. Now, engineers might stretch 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, but a repetitive behavior usually tends to, I mean, you take the life out of the guy, right? So for them, quality, so you always end up saying that, you know, it's a shitty product I'm releasing and probably it's fine, it's bugged, but it's okay, I'll figure it out later and should not be a problem. Okay, so so the balance has to be always maintained between scope and quality because it's not measurable. And that's when the core practice of doing repetitive estimations. I mean, I always suggest people, I have learned it that way. I'm not saying that I was a perfect person at doing estimation, but I think you start doing estimation for your own exercises on some weekend, on some day, and that's how you'll start optimizing that, and your engineers might have a better time out of you. So this concept is very important here to understand. The second one is the cone of uncertainty. So if you go to an engineer with an initial concept, okay, saying that, oh, you know what, this is what I want to build, what might happen is he or she might not be able to correctly estimate as to the amount of time required for development of that particular feature and product. So let's just say that from initial concept, you spend some time as a product manager on top of it, and you get your product definition right, some basic features on top of it. Then you add more time, you complete the PRD or the requirements or the user stories specific to that feature. Then probably it is a front-end heavy product or a front-end dependent product. So you go to your design team, the UI UX is complete and the design is out. Probably now you have invested sufficient time as a product manager, but I guess now the engineer would be able to predict by when he can complete the delivery of the software. So if you see, typically, I think I lost my pointer. Yeah. So ideally, let's say it takes 100 hours. Okay. This is my x-axis. It takes 100 hours to do something. But the estimation is so off that you might easily go up to 400 hours, up or down in terms of your estimation. And that's the variability which we face in today's world. So it's very important to do the correct estimation of a particular feature basis the current stage you are at. If you're at an initial concept, you cannot go ahead and commit to a business person saying that until you're really experienced in doing the estimation as to what would be the X amount of time required to deliver something. Okay. This would be, let's say, the initial concept. The moment you have design in your hand you're in a better situation to talk to your engineers. Maybe how many new APIs do we need to create? Can we utilize some of our existing APIs? Okay, I mean, the front end code, I mean, are some components already built? What kind of platform are we using? Is it React? Is it native? That might give you a better certainty or better direction of, and your cone starts to converge towards your end date of software completion. So it's very important to do the correct estimation in the correct stage you are at. I usually prefer doing estimation from this stage to this stage at once, saying that, okay, by when can I give the first cut of the PRD? Even if I don't have the full cut of the PRD, but it's a super urgent requirement, what I might do is get my objective, risk, assumptions, and the feature stories at one place, give it to my engineer, and try to get their feel in terms of how complex do they feel this is actually. Okay, until the design gets complete. And the next time I actually show the design and complete the PRD, then you end up going to do a better estimation and realize that out of the engineer. That's point two. The point three here, which is the most important part, is it's very important that you always keep the engineers in loop when you have the initial concept till the design is prepared, because they also get a lot of time to think about how they want to structure the code or what kind of architecture they want to build. And I think that's only fair to do that with them, right? So the benefits of structured effort estimation, right? As much the text on the slide, but I mean, I thought you guys could read as I speak as well. So the number one is better decision making, right? Turns out that if I can take the decision today, or I can take my decision tomorrow in terms of business or product capability, for me, or as a product manager, all of you, it's super simple. But for a few of the attendees who are software developers and the delivery, the people who have the KRA of delivery, for them, it becomes very difficult, because the cycle time for them to change something might be one sprint, half a sprint. So what seems to you as a thought, change of thought, might result into a impact of change of sprint for a particular engineer, right? So if you are able to estimate better, and with structure, you're able to foresee what might be the upcoming challenges which might come. Or if the discussions are much better, then you are very much clear about how will you build the system for even handling scale in the future. I always give this example, right? Very basic. Let's say you're building a voucher coupon system. In a typical coupon system, if I give the requirement to my developer, you know what, create a coupon generator system, and the coupon should be 7-digit. It should be alphanumeric. I think with this context, somebody might be a good product manager. But a great PM will always he'll start defining each of the field out of that alphanumeric. Let's say Ramzan is a very big festival in Indonesia here, or Diwali is a very big festival in India. Now, can I say that Diwali 2020 Adit or A? Now, I tend to personalize my coupon with the festival, the person, the timing, and I have a better recall of the coupon which I'm trying to send. Now, if you are able to have this requirement or thought process much before, then a simple coupon can end up resulting a better recall or better application and conversion for the marketing team, right? So the same requirement, but a very different approach of how do you achieve a particular KRN metric, right? The second would be better coordination. I think we are definitely all in the world of microservices, and every single time there is a dependency, interpod dependency, it always becomes a countless meetings. Sometimes it takes 3 to 4 meetings to resolve one single issue. The stakeholders are not available, etc. If you want to really save that time, so the effort estimation or the awareness of the product managers to the system architecture helps him make better decisions. So the team X actually needs to ship out a new app feature, but that is dependent upon the service to be created by team Y. Let's say if team Y estimates it to be released in 2 months, the feature which team X wanted to build, no matter how critical it is, it can be deprioritized, because you know what, there's just no other way to do it. And you can ship out something interesting during that time. I think the last part is definitely better risk management. This I always say, because you can contain the risk of what might blow off, what might not turn up good if not built properly, or you might many a times people make the decisions of making something a very quick fix versus making something with a lot of thought process and decisions. So you can always anticipate the risk of what is the input effort estimation you're putting to the output you're going to realize. And if it's a stopgap arrangement, then what is it, just the time risk, or it is also the risk of not making something which would have gotten more revenue from a customer point of view. The best part I like actually is the discussions with people, whether it's engineering, marketing, finance, operations. You're always exposed to those edge cases or dark corners, which you would have missed owing to your lack of knowledge of that field. So I think this, makes the PRD quite of a foolproof way. Next, we are going to deep dive into the effort estimation frameworks. The first one is the most basic one actually. It's an analogy based framework. We are going to discuss 3 frameworks as I discussed today. The first one is the analogy based framework. I think this depends upon the type of startup you're working at. When I say type of startup, whenever you are working at some place or you're joining some place or you intend to join a new place, always benchmark the company. Are you a pre-Series A startup, a Series A company, a Series B, a Series C? I mean, are you a startup company? You're big enough, you're a unicorn, decacorn. In that way, you are always aware of what is the level of maturity of engineers and product people around you you're going to meet. And that actually helps you to choose the right framework. That would be more of a guideline to all of you as to how do you choose these frameworks. But this is something which I personally always use wherever I go the first time. This helps to truly understand how do people think, get everybody on the same page, because it's really simple to say someone, right, that from a medium sized t-shirt, it usually takes, let's say, half a sprint to deliver. That's 5 business days. We can ship this product out, and you start that as a core principle, and then you build on large Excel and small and extra small. That's how you start prioritizing each of the feature. And once you have the base benchmark, it becomes very easy for you to do the analogy based framework or categorization or bucketizing of features. It will only help you. It will be a very directional effort estimation. I would not say it would be a very perfect effort estimation, but the directional effort estimation, when looked at a group level, when you see all of the effort estimations together, it makes a lot of sense actually. So this is probably the first framework which you can always use to set it out. The second one is the FPA framework, which is the functional point analysis. This is quite simple. I mean, it starts with the Fibonacci series. For all of you, a quick refresher, Fibonacci is you just take the next number, add it to the previous number, and the output is your next number. So for example, 0 plus 1, then 1 plus 1, 2, and 2 plus 1 is 3, and so on and so forth. This is a very perfect way of doing effort estimation, because something which is very big just cannot be the right story point requirement given by the product manager. You should break down into smaller points. So it actually gives you a good amount of good picture of the uncertainty in your effort estimation or seeing the larger items. The second one is, if the story is too big, maybe it is not understood properly. That's why the engineers are giving a very big effort estimation, and it might become a potential risk for you. So usually anything, I think 13 is the last number which we usually accept with, rest is fine. So here, I think what we do with FPA is very simple. From hierarchy to what, to how, and the outcome. So let's say there is a user story or a feature which you're trying to present. It might have a business value, feature impact, or a certain level of complexity the tech would be investing into building it. What would be the estimation story point? Whenever you talk or present the feature in the backlog grooming, or the sprint planning, if something new has come up, you always say that, okay, this might take 5 story points or 2 story points. The more the product people start knowing about the architecture and the system level, the better you're able to estimate the story points. The outcome is nothing but which feature has what. Let's just say from a Jira point of view, or an epic way of development is user story to task to subtask and epic and initiatives, right? In that, a typical user story would have multiple tasks and subtasks. In that, I would always look at, okay, what is my estimate? is the effort which I want to calculate. What would be the output? It would be the total number of hours I would measure. And typically I would say that for me to develop something, develop this feature, I would take X hours. For me to, if I'm a QA, for me to test this feature, I would take Y hours. So this really helps. These are few things which, I mean, I always encourage, I mean, even internally to our product and design people to question and ask ourselves that, okay, if it is design, have we any knowledge of the previous user research done before? If it is coding, how much of coding is required to implement this story, or have we done this before? Can I use the similar API typically in the login, sign off situations, etc. Unit testing, okay, what would be my time required for doing this? And the integration testing, is it a third party integration or inter services integration or inter pod level integration? Typically in your app releases, you have different pods having different stuff. Acceptance testing, what would be the time spent by UAT or the product or training to different people before it ships out? And the expertise is the most important part. Let's say we don't have the right key individual in our team to deliver this, then we would always go and look out at, okay, what are the key people I need to bring in the platform or my team to deliver this? So these are the few questions which I always ask myself whenever I'm looking at something. The last one of the estimation, probably before we jump on to the questions, is the planning poker. It's a group level of estimation. So we first saw is analogy based. Second, we saw a point based, and this is a group level estimation. It's a very democratic way of doing estimation. Let's say the product manager is presenting a particular story. All the developers sitting inside the sprint planning or the backlog grooming, let's say they are front-end developers, back-end developers, app developers, or QAs. They're able to estimate better. They're able to understand each other's frequency and speed to deliver something much better. And if somebody is being very pessimistic or overestimating, you'll always have some other engineer having a better way to do it. So it only brings the best out of the team. It's typically poker. I say that, okay, this will take me so much time. So it's 1, 2, 3, 5, 18, 13, 21. To be really honest, I do not encourage any story about 13 points. I mean, only two things can happen. Either the product manager is not sure of what he wants as an outcome, or the engineer is not sure of the estimation here. Okay. Yeah, this is what I had kept. Get your list on. And okay, Divya, do you want to, do we have
Yeah.
some questions, or
Yes,
it's
we do. One sec.
okay? Yeah.
Okay, so I'll be asking the first question.
Okay.
So that was from Yash actually. So he asked that, in the graph that you had two curves. So
Yeah.
what does the curve on the top resemble?
Okay. I mean, it's okay. I'll just go on that 1 minute. Yeah, this one, right? The cone,
Yeah,
the inverted cone, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So, I think the two situations, right? Underestimation or overestimation. The two situations that either I will say that I would need 0.25% of, so let's say one is 100 hours. Either I can say that, you know what, initial concept I'll deliver in 25 hours, or somebody would say that 4x of 100 hours, even the initial concept I will require, the end product visualization is 400 hours. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. So the next question is from Neeraj. And
Okay.
okay, before that, I'll actually ask Yash if he has a follow back on this.
No, that's it. Thanks,
Okay,
Aditya.
great, thanks. The next question is actually for Neeraj then, from Neeraj. Does this
Okay.
assume that the engineers are not as involved during the problem discovery phase? Seems very waterfall-like to me.
Which one?
One sec. I'll probably, Neeraj would like to explain it more.
Okay.
So I think this was during the phase when you were showing us that cone. So
Okay.
uh, it just looked like I mean the engineers were just handed off the requirements and were asked to estimate at that stage. But I think you did allude to collaboration between them early on, subsequently. So I
Okay.
don't think, I want to probe deeper with this question. I think you kind of answered it.
Okay. Yeah, I think so. I would not say that the engineers do not have the right capability here to give it to you that, okay, how much time it takes. I think they don't have the visibility. Let's say I tell you that this is the initial concept and let me do it. And it's you and me having a conversation in a meeting room when I myself have not looked at assumptions, etc. But you and me are saying that, okay, um, let's say right now it's COVID, so a lot of events are not happening. But let's say I want to build a capability of geofencing. Okay, there's an event happening today, and let's say this was a physical event. Every single person and let's say somebody is sponsoring this event. Okay, so every single person who is entering this place, I can quickly say the moment he's inside the geofence, I can quickly send him a marketing push notification, whether he has this application, or if not, then how do I do it? If he already has the Koinworks application, then it's absolutely fine, right? I can send something, and I come to you and I say that, you know what, Neeraj, I want this to be done. It's perfectly fine. You would say, yeah, maybe I can do it quickly. The moment you start discussing about the edge cases, etc., that's when the issue actually happens. And that's when I meant to say that they don't have visibility to estimate it correctly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so the next question is actually from LinkedIn.
Okay.
So, who should do the t-shirt size estimation? Should it be the tech team or done together as a whole, product plus design plus tech, doing the estimations together?
Okay. So, so product as a vertical would be talking to almost business, marketing, engineering, everyone, right? So let's just say that you're in a meeting room right now only with the business folks. Okay. You're sitting with the founder and he's like, okay, by when do you estimate we can make this live? As long as I don't have a rough benchmarking or a similar philosophy across the company, that we all talk in terms of a same language, which is the, let's say, t-shirt sizing language, which it takes some time to establish or not, then it becomes very simple to communicate to the founder that, you know what, I feel we would need Y effort to do the estimation, Y effort to deliver this together. So the same estimation method goes out everywhere in the conversations. So whenever you are sitting with engineers, definitely the estimation is done separately. But whenever you are preparing a roadmap, let's just say, that very moment you are only talking to different business stakeholders, getting your requirements on the platform, getting into one sheet before you even share it to your engineers. So you'll always need a rough ballpark understanding of your infrastructure and also how to do it, right? So that's when it helps actually. You can always sit with engineers and validate that and do it, and quarter on quarter you'll only get better because you only start understanding your engineers better. Yeah.
Okay. LinkedIn, do you have any follow-up on this?
Okay, yeah, I think Aditya kind of addressed the question, but actually I just have one question. So you are saying that like before that we actually do it with the product managers and then later on we validate it with the tech team. Am I right?
Yeah, I'm not saying that you need to validate it. Like you don't need to block a calendar to validate it, because what typically happens is, let's say we both are working together and we both are part of the same product team. Okay. And we are trying to solve the same product metrics. In that situation, what we would try to do is take all the requirements from all the business stakeholders. And once we get the stakeholders, the requirements, we would try to prioritize them, or try to see, do I have the right engineer capacity? We'll just do the capacity mapping, right, for this quarter. When we are trying to do that, for having some guideline principle, you will do the t-shirt sizing. Now, once you present that to the tech teams and you share it with them, they would always have a rough understanding of how have we done this. And if, let's say, you have given 10 items and they come back and say that we can only do 6 items, that means your estimation and your understanding of the architecture and the tech way of doing something is not aligned. So I'm saying that is how you get a indirect validation, rather than, if you have more questions, you can actually directly validate, but you more or less understand quarter on quarter what is their capacity to deliver something.
Okay, got it.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so another question is from Darshan. He asked,
Okay.
you mentioned early estimations. How does that work with stakeholders, for example,
Yeah.
business or sales, etc.? Does
Okay.
one set expectation with them of variability as well?
Okay, I think it's a good question. So it is somewhere connected to my previous answer, which I gave to Neeraj. I think as an organization, we all, product guys have to take that responsibility of setting that culture. Influence is the only thing we have. I think we have to somewhere ensure that all the stakeholders of the organization are sufficiently aware and they start speaking the same language. So whenever somebody comes to you of wanting to do something, you'll start seeing if you have done your job as product manager good. They will usually come to you and say that, okay, this means this will be an Excel project, right? Or this is a large project, right? And you'll be like, yeah, it seems like a large project. However, I have not deep dived into it. Maybe I'll get back to you. So right now, I am not sure if it's a large, but I'll get back to you. So that's what the variability is. That's how I would communicate to them. But definitely depends upon the kind of person. If somebody is from the marketing team, but more on the implementation side, not just on the growth side, on the creative side, they are definitely more aware of what is the level of feature requirement it takes, right? The front-end growth product managers usually have this understanding of how to do or which feature implementation. So if I answer if I sum up it, two parts. One is we all need to start talking the same language. That's how it helps getting on the same page. And the second one is, yes, you definitely set the variability as a caveat or a disclaimer that right now I feel it's Excel. Let me deep dive into it and get back to you. Please don't feel shy or compelled to get back like tomorrow or day after. I usually look at my calendar and only commit something when I am actually going to have time to get back to it. Initially people kind of take it wrong, but then they get used to you and your way of working and they kind of like it because at least you end up delivering that, right? So it's okay.
Okay, thanks. Another question we have is from Sanket. He asked, can you please tell in detail steps involved in new product development? For example, concept, then design, and then development, and so on. What is the right time you should spend in every phase?
Okay, so Sanket, I think this is a classic, very bird's eye question. I have a very separate slide for this. Is it okay if I address that at the end of the session?
Okay, fair enough. We can probably move to the next question then. It's from Srinivasa. He asks that would you recommend different framework during a different phase of the product for pre-design, design, etc.?
I would not encourage that. When I say three different things, I think they are this is somewhere to the question and answer of Sanket. Let's say different phase of the company and different stage of your product determines the different kind of framework. It would not be at the different stages of your product development itself. Because that would create more problems that your design is on one framework, engineering is on second, and product is on third. At the end of the day, you need consistency. So for example, right now, I would always say that, okay, whenever you're beginning, you use t-shirt sizing. Whenever the people are a bit mature and about how you move on to the functional point analysis, because now everybody starts speaking that and you have better commitment to delivery understanding and FPA. And the planning poker is somewhere when it's a very people-based estimation effort, because everybody needs to be very vocal, very cooperative while they are wanting to answer something, right? So I think it's stage wise to the company and product wise, not to the internal stages.
Fair enough. We have another question from Ankur. He asks how to deal with repetitive backlog.
Oh wow, I have worked with Ankur before, so thanks Ankur. So I think you only in hindsight, if I see that with repetitive backlog, two things. One, really understand how critical is the business requirement. If everything was wanted yesterday, then it becomes a challenge because you never get to build the product the right way. But I guess if the leadership that time you are able to pass a very strong message or communicate that we're not going to push something until we fix it right, the tech gets a very good free hand to clear the tech debt, right? And I think somewhere as product people, we need to support our engineers in giving them that bandwidth to clear the tech debt. So yeah, product is a tightrope. Yep.
Okay, now the last question for this segment, which is from Yash actually. He asks again, which estimation type do you prefer? I guess every technique has its own pros and cons, but which ones do you think translate into practice very well?
I personally use the FPA method, functional point analysis. It's evergreen, it's classic, it always helps. it gets everybody talking in the same language. You start estimating something. On the business side, I would always say that I would speak to them in terms of half a story, half a sprint or a full sprint. And that's when they see, in business side, once they get trust on you, they will not poke you every single time as to when is this going to release. Even if there is a backlog, they'll sufficiently trust that, okay, there might be, because of a certain reason, somebody's unwell, startups are stretched, especially during COVID times, everybody's working from home, all that is fine. However, the functional point analysis is a beautiful method to work with engineers. And if you want to take it to the next level, then that's planning poker. But that requires sufficient maturity on the engineering side. Fundamentally, right, people are, we as people, product managers are always expected to be people managers, but not everybody is. If not everyone in the team is tightly knit and they're not able to present their point well, the points might come as offensive and defensive in the planning poker technique, and that might actually kind of break the kind of the harmony of the team. In terms of, I've usually seen that either silos are created, it's like my view versus your view, and we always want the data view to win, right, as to what is the best way to build this, because I, as a product manager, I'm the only person representing the customer, right? So that way, I think personal choice is FPA right now. And all these things are what I've used. I think on the internet, you'll find 100 methods. These are the classic 3 things which I've always implemented in all my previous experiences and have learned a lot.
Great, thanks. Probably we can go ahead with the session now.
Okay, Mr. Trump had to speak a lot. So the next one would be, yeah, that brings us to the prioritization frameworks. This one is a bit clear. I mean, this is how the life of a product manager is. I mean, any gender, it's like everything is urgent. Everything is important. Everything was supposed to be delivered sometime. We didn't know stakeholders. That's when actually the relationships come into the picture. But I feel if the next 5 frameworks, we are able to do it better, our life can be this. And this is what I always aim at, like juggle with problems rather than being worried about problems. And I mean, personally, it has been a journey with myself being there and doing something. So I have certainly enjoyed it. And I'm going to share the exact things which I've done. One is this. We have all learned in our organic chemistry, right, back in your schooling about the prioritization periodic table. So these are all the prioritization frameworks available, indexed against qualitative and quantitative, internal and external. When I say external, external is something where you need, the horizontal axis is the people outside the core development team. So the stack ranking method can be completely, this is SR. This method can be completely done by all the people who are very internal focused and very internal to the team. Okay. And the vertical axis is definitely from qualitative to quantitative. If you go to the IAM framework or the FA framework, all of these are very quantitative. They, it's like an input criteria, output criteria, you get a score, the score defines in what priority you should build something. To be really honest, these are very good concepts. I love reading them. I've never implemented them. I've never seen somebody implementing them. They tend to be tedious. There are no single no automated tool which has implemented this properly, and people tend to be aware of this but have never been into implementation. So there are 5 out of this which I have most used, few on the quantitative and few on the qualitative side which I've used, which we're going to discuss today. The first one is the stack ranking method. Now in the stack ranking method, it's very simple. The priority is from 1 to n. This is more like the t-shirt size effort estimation equivalent of prioritization. It's like the most basic method of prioritization. When you stack rank, every backlog item you have, you consider either as 1, and then you start going to the next item, etc. Obviously there can be only 1. So it's usually you fighting for as to what is the most critical item you need to build first. We need to avoid the common product pitfall in terms of everybody thinks everything is important, and people usually sit with blank faces sometimes when I discuss with them what is most important, and they're like, everything is important. I'm like, you know what, we need to do our homework better. Is it the customer external customer we want to deliver first, internal customer we want to deliver first? Is it the tech debt the engineer has to fix? Is your app rating you want to increase? That's when the metrics and OKRs kind of help, but that's a different session maybe. But the stack ranking method is a high priority method of putting order of 1 to n. The typical questions which you can ask yourself is, I mean, the ones which I've mentioned on the slide, but they are like, whichever feature is the most detailed, you have absolute clarity about, you'll see oftentimes invariably, or you'll always stack them the first, because you're so confident about what you want to build. It is so small, it will go out quickly, and a healthy sprint cycle with regular releases keeps a very good momentum inside your company. The trust factor is high, the releases are good, the customer is happy, internal customer is happy, maybe your operations team or your marketing team is getting something which they want, which is enabling them to achieve their own OKRs and metrics. So the top of the part is something which is very laser sharp, which is very clear to you. The back of the backlog is something which you're not very sure of. If I as an engineer ask you as a product manager, please explain me this feature right away in 2 lines, they'll not be very clear of how to tell you that. So I've read it somewhere, right? People usually get confused with somebody able to explain a complex topic by talking about it for 4 hours or 16 hours or like 2 days. But I guess the upside and the other way to look at it, somebody who is really a subject matter specialist is able to explain the same complexity in 4 minutes. If you're able to explain something in 4 minutes, that means you understand that so well that you can explain it to a small kid. So if usually what you can explain to a small kid is something here, what you are not able to explain something and you say, I need this, then I'll do this, and then that, then that's like here. That's further downline the priority, and you keep sharpening the smaller things as they move forward, right? What are the key levers? You always evaluate the dependencies. You always see, are they aligned to your sprint goals? Which are the riskiest items? Which are the lowest hanging fruits, right? This is how you determine the stack ranking method. It's a basic one. The second one is kind of my favorite. I use this in my conversations a lot whenever I talk to people. Also in any buying decision which I make in my life, actually, to be really honest. Something which is must have versus something I should have versus I could have, but it really does not matter, versus I don't want this at all. Like, I don't want to have this at all. It's really out of my budget. Do I want a chartered plane right now? Like, probably I won't have that. Like, absolutely no. I don't have any need. There's no air bubble to fly to any country right now, right? But could I have that if I want to travel somewhere? Yeah, good luxurious item. But should I have that? No, not really. Must have. Maybe I'm not in the right circle of people earning that much to own that, right? So just give an example to understand, okay, for each of the feature, we always need to prioritize. Is it a must have? Is it a non-negotiable? In terms of your waterfall kind of strategy, is it like your MVP product that without this, you cannot build anything on top of your, right? So typically your MVP is always your must have. Something which you should have is, it is good to have, but the customer will not care. The initial people will anyway come on your platform. The right way to look at this is this. So whenever you do the prioritization with Moscow features, let's say you have 100 hours from your engineers, 80% always go to the must-haves. Okay, you have a solid business case for it. You have a minimal usable subset, which is your typical MVP. So 80% of the time is committed here. It's not that mathematically I have come to this number. You start doing this sprint by sprint, you'll realize 80% of the sprint packing capacity always comes with something which is a must have, because rest everything is anyway kicked out. Should have is something, the business case warrants it or it gives an extra scope, it's amazing to have it should have. And could have is something like a contingency. I mean, it's okay to have it, but if not, it gets to spill over to the next sprint. The third one is my personal favorite. I do this again. These are more like the conversational ones, but right now, we use this even at Koinworks for our product development at a very initial stage. We might jump off to something in next quarter, but right now, this is what we are using. Eisenhower was nothing. Not a nothing. He was a person during World War II. He used to work in army, a senior person colonel, and he used to always find time to do his art during World War II at the front. And everybody, whenever I used to question him, how do you manage your time? He says these 4 things. Something which is important and urgent, I do it now. If it is a PRD, I need to submit to someone on Monday and I don't have time, I do it now. If it is urgent but not important, that means that if it is not important, okay, but it is urgent, it's a repetitive task maybe, or I can give it to someone, I can delegate it to someone in my team, or I can do it later on. As a lead, as a manager, it changes. But if I'm a PM who is nobody below me, obviously urgent and important and not important urgent is the same. This is the same for you. Something which is not important and not urgent, yeah, I think we'll not waste a second talking about it. That's how we actually move it to the next backlog. But something which is important but not urgent, we need to decide. We need to know when should we do it. What is the right timing? If, for example, let's say I want to upgrade my voucher system right now, okay, at Koinworks. But obviously it's COVID time. There's nothing to celebrate. I cannot send someone that, it's payday, buy this, invest here. I'm not even sure if my user has a job or not, right? So I don't want to hurt someone. So I cannot send celebratory kind of messaging. In that case, it always helped us to prioritize the features which are not urgent but important, to prioritize them to the later part of it, right? So this is Eisenhower for you. The fourth one is very subjective, but in the periodic table, it kind of sits with qualitative and quantitative both. So right now we are only going to talk in this scope qualitative way of Kano method. So Kano again is a brilliant method, the Japanese scientist. Good to know about it. So there are 5 thresholds, 5-dimensional prioritization method. The first one is the must be. These are the features which have to be on your app or web, which are like your MVP for the customer to come and do a one single transaction. The second one is attractive. If you have them, you'll definitely get 3 more extra users, or 300 more extra users, or 100,000 more extra users. Okay, it's like it's going to be that brilliant for you. The third one is the one-dimensional. One-dimensional means that if you have it or if you don't have it, it just does not matter to the user. Okay. For example, if you have a banner with dynamic content versus a banner with a static content, the user doesn't give a damn about it. It really does not matter to him. For him, what it matters is, what does the banner tell him? Is the readability good? If it is information or voucher or coupon, he's able to exercise it. Indifferent. Sorry, I just mixed it. The indifferent is when it does not match. One dimensional is happy, unhappy when the feature is not there. Sorry for that mess up. Reverse one is that if you do this, you'll make the customers unhappy. For example, I had a 2-step login process, okay? And I added an extra authentication or a security, so-called security layer, which involves a user action. And it has turned out to be a 3-step registration process. Now it is something which might not make my users happy, but definitely depends upon the type of product. If it is fintech, the users are kind of used to uploading documents, doing something. But it is e-commerce checkout, I adding a separate screen for entering his PIN code versus his address is absolutely not going to make him happy, right? Indifferent is something which has no impact to the customer satisfaction. Let's say you have tech debt and you're fixing your tech debt, your engineers are doing something, the customer has no visibility of what you're fixing. He's totally indifferent to it. So that would be the example of indifferent. One dimensional is feature which is, let's say, for example, notification system after every transaction. So comms are of 3 types: engagement comms, transaction comms, and let's say promotion comms. Now, promotion comms is anyway, not many people like it. You always swipe left and you leave it. But transaction comms, if they're not on your platform, whenever you are, let's say, selling vegetables, Big Basket in India, Sayur Box in Jakarta, and you're trying to buy something and you never get on email as to, or OTP that the money is there. Now that's a one-dimensional thing. The customer is not going to be happy if it's not there, right? So this is how it is, the Kano method. Probably I'll go and break the graph one by one. So the horizontal axis is the functionality. The right side is obviously the most positive, it's the best, and the left side is the none. I mean, for him, the functionality is you're just not giving any feature to the user. The y-axis, is the satisfaction thing. If you're able to give something which sits or delights the customer or makes him satisfied, now that's on the real high scale. And something which is below, it's actually frustrating to the user, right? So now coming to the performance part of it, this is a very linear form of scale. We always know linear at a 45 degrees angle. So performance is one factor which is both dependent upon functionality and satisfaction. The moment I go into that direction linearly, I know for a fact that my users are going to be happy and satisfied because the functions I provide to them, it might also be the USPs which my competitors do not have. The second one is the must be. Now the must be, if you see, it sits here because the functionality has to be there, but it's not going to satisfy him because it has to be there. Okay, I mean he or she expects the basic feature to be there. So you need to give that functionality, but there's zero satisfaction here. Attractive features are something which are your disruptor features, which nobody in the market has, which is not only going to give him functionality, but also the satisfaction. So in the Indian context, for example, what Google Pay did with the cashback and vouchers. If you see Google as a company, they are a bunch of data scientists, PhDs, who have a very simple way of, they really mastered the way of how to give cashback to people. Okay, post every transaction, give a voucher, etc. But what PhonePe did much better was the ability to send money to someone. The search functionality was much better, which is very counter to Google because Google is just the search giant, right? But what people still attracted to PhonePe for a longer duration, even when the cashback was not there, initially people probably took that advantage, was because the way organized way I can search someone. So that was more like the satisfaction. Indifferent is the tech debts, which we discussed. Like it doesn't provide any functionality, it doesn't provide any satisfaction. The user is oblivious to the fact of its existence. So it's like absolutely fine. The last one is the scorecard method. This is some, I mean, very matured, probably startup organizations use the scorecard method. It's very simple. It's very your OKR or metric driven, or the other simple words would be 3-man strategy. It can be sprint by sprint, quarter by quarter. You can implement this anything. You can have a standard automated Excel sheet ready. You can input weights and move it forward. So for example, there are 5 criteria basis which you are going to judge every feature. Okay, and for the 5 criteria you have given the weight. So if a particular feature has the criteria 1, you give it 20%. Let's say this can be customer satisfaction, the revenue coming to us. These are the criteria. Okay, the weight is dependent upon your OKR of the company. Revenue, let's say, is 30%. It really matters to the company. Retention is 20%. Okay, or satisfaction is 10, NPS is 10%, or similarly, these might be the criterion, and this is your feature list. Now, basis weight, on a level of score, I mean, on a scale of 100, you give points, right? And when you do the numbering system, you just add these percentage into numbers and it comes to it. So whichever has the highest score, you actually put this as the first rank. This is somewhat subjective and qualitative and quantitative way of doing it. Quite accurate, but probably need some time. You cannot just go and suddenly implement this, because you need, see, any framework is only going to be successful when your design, product, engineering, and business teams are aligned to it. It might sound very interesting. I mean, it might sound the best to you, but it might not make sense to the company. So if the adoption is low, you'll always fail, like, and you'll waste time in failing. So, but I think this is something which I like the most, actually. Easier data-driven way of doing something. This is something which I'll quickly, I think Sanket, you asked me this question before as to which framework of effort estimation versus which framework of prioritization to be used in which context. So let's just say I'm doing a design thinking, or I'm ideating at a very early stage of a problem. Okay, I might use t-shirt sizing here. Okay, but I'm talking only about me as a product manager talking to me, because that's the first time even I'm looking at a problem, right? I also don't know how to solve it, let's say. Let's say I figured it out and now I'm putting that as a minor experiment. It's not like a A/B testing experiment, because people usually take A/B testing as the first level of experiment, right? Sometimes that is which an external tool will provide you to provide the capability to do something. But this is mostly like a new go-to market tool or a feature which you're trying to build. So you kind of build it, you try to measure, you try to learn, you again iterate, measure and learn. And if it is successful, that is the time it goes in your agile cycle. When it goes to your agile cycle, this is when you are properly agile. Here, probably you're more like waterfall. You're trying to build something for the first time until the MVP is ready. You cannot ship it. You cannot build the incremental features into smaller agile components or stories. So it's mostly sits here, right? So in that iron triangle method of effort estimation, here probably by this time, if you have a MVP ready, or a lot of companies or startups have this Area 51 labs, or Swiggy has kind of the Swiggy labs, which they keep experimenting with a lot of new stuff. I would always say they iterate quickly, they fail quickly. They have a very this form of way of effort estimation, which would be because FPA and planning poker sits here. FPA and t-shirt sizing can sit here as well. Okay. And from an prioritization method here, probably you can have the Eisenhower Matrix also works. The first three one work better here, and Kano and the last one also, the scoring method also works better in the agile cycle. Okay. But having said that, whichever framework works and wins is whichever is accepted by everyone. If you try to suddenly change something, and if it is not accepted properly, you will always have failure. The second part, which I always tell people to be very mindful of, is understand which kind of company and which kind of product you're building right now. Are you here at a very early stage where you don't even have 10,000 active users or 10,000 users on your platform? Probably you're in the formation stage. If you're in validation where your MVP is out and you're trying to make it bigger, just do not worry about making the framework and your life really complex. Frameworks are here to help you and make your life easier. So probably I will use here the FPA in this stage in like basis my confidence, or the Eisenhower in this part, so that I proceed. But in the growth, definitely have to be data driven and understand, because it becomes very complex, and you're competing with the marketing feature versus operation feature versus finance feature versus tech debt. That time I'll be definitely going through FPA or planning poker in the effort estimation context, and in the prioritization context, somewhat like Kano or the scoring method is very data driven, or Eisenhower also works better. Yeah. So I guess, yeah, Divya, I guess that's it from my side for now, and open for more questions.
Thank you so much, Aditya. Okay, so the first question would be from Yash in this
Okay.
part. Okay, so within the product itself, how do we prioritize for features? Some of the features might not be quantifiable to warrant inclusion in building out. Just sizing for tech bandwidth is enough. Is it? Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that some of the features might not be quantifiable to warrant. Okay. Can you give me an example when you're able to say that a particular feature is not quantifiable? Yes.
Say we have 5 features that we want in the product, and some of it might be, say, cosmetic changes, for example, and we don't really know the impact of that brings about for the customer, right? So how do we?
Yeah.
So you mentioned this is where when you were on the
Prioritization.
prioritization slide. So
Okay.
how do you prioritize for the product itself?
Okay, so so whenever I prioritize, I would always first and foremost look at all the features in the context of their effort estimation, right? Because during prioritization, let's say I'm saying that I'm using the basic method of stack ranking. If it is super clear and it's cosmetic and etc., then I might just stack it. The highest here. When I say the quantifiable is not there, when I say, it is not quantifiable, I think. Because you're not sure if the feature or the change you're trying to make, will it be a success or not. That is the only reason why you're not able to quantify it, right? However,
Right.
you always go with the guideline that if I do this, this might happen. That's why there is some data which has prompted. Either there is data or there is gut, right? You have some data which you have seen internally. There are some daily user metrics or session data basis which, or some screen drop or some heat map which you have seen that the user is coming on this particular screen, and after the screen he is dropping. Or let's say you have placed an anchor tag there and you see that the person does not go below that anchor tag, and you know that, okay, maybe the information on the top is not exciting enough, you change the English language. Now that level of if you have that level of clarity, I think sizing of the tech bandwidth is absolutely fine. You are very clear in the direction you are going. It's totally fine because you're also anticipating the output. So that I think it's fine.
Great.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Next question is from Himanshu. In case of scorecard method, is it possible to assign a criterion metric change to each feature every
Yeah.
time? For example, you have improved NPS. Is it because of feature 1, 2, or 3?
Yeah.
How confidently can one do so based on your experience?
Okay, great. So, Himanshu, I guess the first thing here is, if I understand the question right, which Divya said is it possible to assign a criterion metric change to each feature every time? Now, let's say I am running a charter, okay, and I'm running a retention charter at a particular company. NPS is the ultimate metric, but in that retention charter, everything I do, if it is not an NPS is the OKR agreed with business for that quarter, and if it does not connect to that NPS, I don't think I should do it. Okay, it might feel good, it might look good, but if you feel that that is not going to improve the NPS, then we'll certainly not touch it. Like very strong no to even picking that. Like because now the moment you touch the scorecard method, it's data driven. The moment there is data and you say that against a particular criterion, you cannot put a value, then it just not you cannot use it. However, the example which you have given is if you have to improve NPS, it is because of feature 1 or 2. That is about measurement of which feature has contributed to NPS. That is a very different form of measurement. That is not prioritization. When I say prioritization, prioritization is helping me in form of my assumption and basis my effort estimation, which I build first will get me the maximum benefit towards my metric. Now, second part is which feature actually ended up getting the maximum benefit. That we only can do by measurement, by some form of click data, or typically you can use some kind of pathfinder to understand, or there are some correlation metrics which you can say that which you are already when you have written the PRD, you had already said these are my success metrics and this is how am I going to measure them. So for my confidence about what changed the NPS, that is a different measurement. But how will I prioritize? It has to match my criterion. If it does not, probably we should not build it. But yeah, if you have some external pressure even so to build it, yeah, some minimum quantity, because you need to put a number, right? At least 10%. Yeah, then it makes sense probably.
Fair enough. Uh,
Thanks, Aditya.
yeah.
I just have a follow-up question here.
Okay, yeah.
Aditya, if I understand correctly, is it possible that let's say you prioritize a feature 1 to
Yeah,
improve your NPS,
yeah,
but after delivering all the features and then you measure the NPS, it is possible that it is because of feature 2, right?
absolutely. Absolutely, because that's what I'm saying. Let's say in the decision making, it is data driven or gut feel. But whenever it comes to NPS, NPS is such an industry specific. Let's say I'm working in the mobility industry. To crack it, I think I cannot directly implement any concept, let's say from the fintech industry, right? So you might very well see that feature 1 will completely collapse and feature 2 will give you very good results.
Understood. Yeah. Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
Fair enough. The next question is from Bhagirekha. She asks, "How have you ever been in a situation where a project or product has two PMs? If so, how do you tackle the scenarios when both PMs have different POVs or different approaches of decision making with least struggle?"
Okay. I have two answers to this. One is a classic answer which every hippo gives me, which is be data driven. But the challenge here is, I guess it's two personalities or two classic personas having two different opinions, right? It's your view against my view, your data against my data. So I think I have been into this situation, but usually I think the way I tackle is, usually I try to understand what does the person really want out of this conversation. Is it some kind of validation from me or acceptance from me? Is it sufficient if I say, you know what, you're right in thinking, but not the right time to implement this. But all they seek sometimes is just the validation to listen from me that I am in agreement of their thought, maybe not the right time to implement them. So try to solve it at the people angle rather than, use data for sure as the first option. If the things do not solve, then I think it's more deep rooted people side issue, which you should address as to, okay, between two people, it's not effort estimation conversation. This we are talking as a prioritization conversation. Now, whenever it comes to prioritization, the data talks about the output metric. But like we discussed with Himanshu, I mean, NPS is a very different thing, but something which is very clear and you feel it will go right. Sometimes it's okay to take a step back also and to see the other side implement, because they also have to hold up to the other side of the bargain. So it's totally fine. But try to solve it at a people level rather than at a data level if data fails.
Okay, thanks. The next question is from Neeraj. Do you have any recommendations on any good reads on estimation and prioritization frameworks, especially for early stage companies?
Wow. Okay. I think bulk of my career has been in early stage till Series C kind of companies. So these are the things which I've read and implemented the most. But probably what you can go is, I think there is one website, Folding Burritos. You can go there and probably they have a very good explanation of the periodic table, which I've just shown. I mean, it's not mine actually. I took credits to him. So you'll have at least 20 all the periodic kind of stuff to read about and implement. But see, that's the thing whenever you read websites versus whenever you read Medium or Substack, you'll always feel the difference in what you read versus what is implementable. So what I've learned out of this is that you do something, you implement it yourself, you figure it out, you gauge yourself, you gauge your ambience, company, people, how are they able to manage your speed and thought process, and accordingly you keep changing. Otherwise there's no right fit for, there's no other way to go ahead, etc.
Fair. The next question would be from Vivek. Are there any kind of best practices you would share which would help project management teams with respect to working with the company at large, business, tech, strategy?
Okay. So you're saying that, Divya, can you repeat? Sorry.
Yeah, are there any kind of best practices you would share which would help project management teams with respect to working with the company at large?
Okay. I think my number one and always my strategy is over communicate, over communicate, over communicate. There is nothing which you feel is known to you and you feel that it's known to other. It's totally fine. Initially, I mean, you can send, have a cadence of updates. You always need to ensure that you're able to update someone at a weekly level, bi-weekly level, monthly level, with across to all teams. See, what is the core requirement of all these functions at different levels of hierarchy and functional? Everybody wants to be updated of what are we doing, by when it will be completed, and by, and have we done it before or after. So I guess communication is the core part of it. When one of the strategy would be, at a weekly level cadence, have a weekly sync up with people whom you work with the most. Actually, the level or hierarchy does not matter here. Somebody who you're a direct contributor to or a direct consumption of data, or you do have a very regular cadence to meet them. That will ensure that whatever is running on top of their mind also, that is kind of part of your discussion, so you're able to prioritize better and get a good sense of direction. That would be my number one. Second would be send flashes of what you're doing. If you use some tools, the tools have very, just one button for you to have the reports coming out at regular frequency. Once the report is out, give at least a day or two for people to churn that, sleep over it, and then you write a set of questions that, okay, what is the best way to do this? I generally don't like to, let's say, write a very offensive or a question which will make the other person very defensive with a large audience in CC. Try to have one-on-one conversations to build your rapport first. If that goes fine, then you understand that, okay, you guys think alike, and then you go ahead, right? That's the second part. The third part, never go after the problem. Try to understand the person, like what kind of methods they try to work, who are they. Like example, marketing, I cannot have a very lame conversation with marketing all the time. I might not be considered as a creative person. And the problem is with that ideation that reflects into my roadmap. So I think the top for any project management teams, the conversations, communications, and knowing whom to speak what and when is the core part, according to me, which I kind of follow to get the best out of it.
Great. Next question is from Harshad actually. For a B2B product, when users or agencies are uncertain about their requirements and ask for multiple revisions in the features, how would you suggest to handle that?
Okay, classic question, and it's very relevant in B2B product companies. So Harshad, sorry, take a step back, okay? And you should, run a lot of FGDs, user surveys, directly talking to your customers, users, because sometimes the agencies also have interpretation gaps, and they do their own self-prioritization, right? When people start doing their own self-prioritization, that's when is a major problem, because they assume something and they come and tell you this is what I want to do. So the best part is start accompanying them with meetings. Majority of the B2B SaaS based companies always have this approach that the product consultant, they call it the product consultant, they're always with them on the call. They kind of understand what the user is saying. Like, you listen and you don't hear. Maybe you don't say anything, you're on mute, you take notes, it's absolutely fine, but you would always like to listen to people, break down into notes, and then when you're able to have the conversation with your agency, you'll figure it out that same conversation, you're in the meeting, but they have a very different interpretation. And if you're not there, you don't know how to set the benchmark or how to set the trust level of what the user is understanding, what the agency is understanding from the user. So that can be one of the things. Second, I think you need to spend a lot of time on the product yourself with the users, do a lot of competition landscaping. What are the different features which your competition is giving? What are those things which are must have, should have? And then you have a very strong argument versus why you should build this compared to that. This will also save multiple revisions because you'll get more time to think of something. So usually your life will be horrible for 1 month because you'll read a lot. Your weekends will be dedicated to the product you're building. But you know what? After that 1 month, you'll see so much of output in terms of your thought process and your ability to take on the fly decision making. It's great.
Okay, so the
Uh,
next question is, yeah, the next question would be from Ankur. How to manage scenarios where a product manager is a fresher in his job, but the tech team is an experienced one. How to manage expectations here and avoid delay in releases.
Okay, so I think first, it's a very tough situation to be in. So I totally empathize with Ankur. You have to listen to somebody giving you requirements who does not know the end of it. So yes, I empathize. However, uh, to be really honest, I'm always interested when anybody says me something, but I'm only interested in the part after they say but or however. So however, in this context, how do you manage expectations here and avoid delay in release? So Ankur, do you mean, if you can unmute yourself, and do you mean this particular product manager is kind of over committing to the business without even having a conversation with you or assuming how complex it is to build something, and that's why it's irritating for you?
I just not overcommitting, basically, not understanding a lot of stuff and probably not
Oh,
committing at all. Basically, so there are no PRDs and stuff, so things like that.
okay. So you mean to say the quality of thought process or that resulting into a particular PRD, that depth you don't see, and that's why there's no joy of building something. Is that what you mean?
Right. So what happens is like I am able to figure out more stuff
Stuff.
into the product than him. So things like
Okay.
that.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, there would be challenges when I think personally, which has helped me the most here is I think I have been there into one situation myself as a PM early on, and also as someone who had one person reporting to him as into similar thing. So I guess one thing which I always realize is I look at the core of the person. If he or she is the person I have to work with at the longer term, then I always then I make peace with the situation. Point number one. And point number two, constant feedback. You have to be ruthless when you give feedback, and try to convince them as to when you're saying something why it is good for them. You can also have a daily, a weekly kind of cadence system where you tell them that, okay, research more about this, look at more use cases, don't spoon feed them, but give them directions for them to do it themselves. So I always judge people into two aspects actually. Is there skill, or there is will? Because if the skill is not there, you can anyway upskill someone or reskill someone. But if the will is not there, then not a right fit. You're only going to waste your time on that. So the skill versus will, if you're able to take that judgment call better, and if it's only a skill issue, then maybe you can take a decision to invest some time to give a regular feedback system, and then say that, okay, go and read about this company, how have they done it, what they have done it, and do you think that has relevance to the features we are building? And if that makes sense, probably, yeah, you'd have a and if you see improvement, that's really great. If you still don't see improvement, yeah, then there is a challenge. Then probably you have to go a bit more about then the feedback there.
Sure,
Does
that
that
helps.
help you in any way? Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Aditya. I would just request all the attendees to probably switch on their cameras so that we can have a small group picture. And if there are any questions which are left, actually we're already, we have exceeded the time limit. So I would request you all to probably have a call, you can probably ask Aditya separately on LinkedIn. I hope that's fine. Okay, so the first frame goes, one sec. Okay, 1, 2, 3. One sec, I'll just take it for the next frame as well. Fair enough. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for attending. And the recording for the session and the slides would be shared and in the post-session email. It would also be great if you all could share your feedback, which would be sent to you in next 15 minutes.
Okay. Thanks, guys. And I would really would like to thank all the people who have donated. I mean, starting from $1, I think that makes a long shot. And I think it's a very good idea to UP as a platform. I mean, lots of luck to the organizing team and only take it to the next level. Because I think world has a lot of issues. COVID might be ending, but there's always a way to contribute to everything, right? So all the best to everyone.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Stay safe, guys. Good day. Good night.
Good night.